Get up, go to the window, have a squiz at the street. The trailer that's been parked out front since footy season started. The Hills hoist leaning at an angle that would never pass a building inspection. Your own wheelie bin still sitting on the verge 4 days after bin night because nobody's job it is to move it. Now sit back down, grab your phone, open realestate.com.au at 11 o'clock at night, the way literally all of us do, and none of us admit to. And suddenly you're looking at a 5-bedroom architect Reno somewhere near Byron, plunge pool, engineered stone bench tops the size of a ute tray, a shed bigger than most Sydney one-bedders, and a quiet little voice goes, "Everyone's doing better than me." They're not, mate. That's not you being negative. That's just bad maths. Because what you're scrolling through isn't an Australian house. It's an Australian fantasy, shot in a wide lens, styled by a stranger, lit like a jewellery ad. So let's do something actually useful. Let's work out what normal looks like. Not aspirational, not what your cousin reckons, but normal according to the ABS, Cotality, the AER, and the ATO, as it actually stands in 2026. By the end of this, you'll know exactly where your place sits. And I reckon you'll feel a fair bit better about it. Here's the number everyone thinks they know. As of May 2026, the national median dwelling value in Australia is $941,864, according to Cotality, up 8.8% on the year. But you've probably heard over $1 million thrown around too. You're not wrong either. The combined capital cities median is sitting above $1,030,973 because that figure strips out every regional town and leans hard on Sydney and Melbourne. Two credible numbers, 90 grand apart, describing the same country in the same month. So if the people whose entire job is measuring this stuff can land 90 grand apart, how confident should you really be, ranking your own place against a headline you half remember from the news? Here's the part that actually matters. The average Australian house is a ghost. It's the midpoint of several completely different countries wearing the same flag. Sydney's median sits around $1,282,020. Darwin's around $634,368. That's not a gap. That's not even the same property market. A one-bedroom unit off King Street with a lift that smells faintly of a servo pie can cost more than a 4-bedroom house on a full block in Darwin with room for a boat. And the direction of travel just flipped on everyone. Perth is up close to 26% this year. Darwin's up over 20%. Brisbane's up nearly 19%. Meanwhile, Sydney barely moved, up 2.3%. And Melbourne, the so-called second city, grew just 0.5%. The old story was, everything chases Sydney. That story's dead. The boom moved west and north, while the harbour city had a quiet year. So if your place is worth $650,000, you are not behind. You're not below average. You are sitting exactly where Adelaide, Darwin and most of regional Australia sits. The headline number is being dragged up by a handful of harbourside postcodes you were never competing with in the first place. Now, here's the twist, almost nobody clocks, and it's the one that actually explains why so many of us feel cramped in houses that, on paper, shouldn't feel cramped at all. Stick around because this bit changes the whole picture. Australia builds some of the biggest new houses on the planet, average floor size around 230 square metres, second only to the United States and nearly triple the size of a typical UK home. So why does your place still feel tight? Because while the house got bigger, the block underneath it got smaller. The quarter-acre block, Hills hoist, trampoline, a Tirana up on blocks, room to actually kick a footy, is basically extinct in every new growth corridor in the country. Developers now fit a bigger house on a smaller lot, fence to fence, because land is the expensive bit, not brick. So the big Aussie home you feel guilty about not measuring up to often has a strip of turf you could mow in 90 seconds and a 2-story place next door with a rumpus room window staring straight down into your kitchen. You've got more house and less yard than your parents did. If you feel boxed in, you're not being precious. You're doing correct maths on a shrinking block. We're still overwhelmingly a house country, at least on the census. Around 70% of occupied homes in Australia are separate houses. Roughly 13% are townhouses and 16% are apartments. But look at who's renting and who isn't. and the picture shifts fast. Renters now make up close to a third of all households. Ownership among 25 to 29-year-olds has fallen to around 36%. For 30 to 34-year-olds, it's roughly half. So while Australia as a whole is still a house country, the next generation is quietly becoming a unit and townhouse generation. Not because they're bad with money, but because the block your parents bought in 1994 simply isn't for sale at that price anymore, anywhere. Here's the one that stings a bit. A huge chunk of Australia's housing stock. The fibro place, the weatherboard, the brick veneer built before ceiling insulation was standard, was designed for a climate and an energy price that no longer exists. Now, the actual good news, the regulator's default price cap for 2026 to 27 has actually eased in most of the country. Power bills are coming down slightly across New South Wales and southeast Queensland, with only a small bump in South Australia. But cheaper power per unit doesn't save you if your uninsulated fibro place is bleeding heat out through the walls every winter night, or your dark tin roof turns the lounge room into a pizza oven every February afternoon. That's not the power company's fault. That's just old housing stock doing what old housing stock does. Running an older home properly costs more, no matter what the unit rate says. Roughly 31% of Australian households own their home outright. No mortgage, nothing owed. Sounds great until you check who they are. Overwhelmingly older and overwhelmingly bought in when the price-to-income multiple was something a single wage could actually survive. The rest of us own something very different. A debt secured against a building with the bank's name on the title until the last repayment clears. New owner-occupier loans are averaging around $736,000 nationally and $873,000 if you're borrowing in New South Wales, against a cash rate sitting at 4.35% after this year's run of hikes, with typical mortgage rates hovering around 5.5%. So when someone tells you their house is worth $900,000, they're quoting the bank's asset. What's actually yours is the deposit plus whatever equity you've clawed back since settlement. Everything else is a very long-term rental agreement with better paperwork. Before we wrap this up, drop your suburb and your bedroom count in the comments. I genuinely want to see how close we all land to these numbers, because I reckon most of you are going to be a lot closer to normal than your feed's been letting on. So why do so many people who own a perfectly decent home still feel house poor? Because we're running a rigged comparison. You're putting your actual Tuesday, the coats on the banister, the school bag dumped in the hallway, up against a display home in a display village, or a place that just spent 8 weeks getting turned inside out on the block. Nobody lives in a display home. The furniture's scaled down so the rooms read bigger on camera. The styling budget is bigger than most people's entire kitchen reno. You're not comparing houses, you're comparing your real life to somebody else's marketing budget, and it's an unwinnable fight because it was never designed to be won. Small side note, because it matters. If you're not on the ladder yet, the settings have actually shifted in your favour recently. The first home guarantee now has no income caps and no cap on places, letting eligible buyers in with a 5% deposit and no lender's mortgage insurance. And the Help to Buy scheme will let the government co-own up to 40% of a new place alongside you. Doesn't fix everything, but it's a genuinely different starting line than a couple of years ago. So, is your house normal? If it's a house or a townhouse with a mortgage attached to it, if it's got a strip of grass out back that the neighbours can see straight into, if it's worth somewhere between $600,000 and $1.3 million, depending which state you're standing in. If it needs a jumper in July and a fan going flat out in February, congratulations. That's not a compromise. That's Australia. You're not behind. You're here with the rest of us. Le Corbusier once called a house a machine for living in, not a trophy, not a scoreboard for the street, a machine. So ask the real questions. Is it dry? Is it cool enough in February and warm enough in July? Is it safe? Do the people inside it actually want to walk back through that door at the end of the day? If the answer is yes, you're housed better than the vast majority of human beings alive on this planet right now. Not 70% of your Instagram feed, a genuine majority of everyone, everywhere. The house was never the problem. The comparison was, go put the kettle on. That's what the kitchen's for. If that shifted how you look at your own place, do me a favour and smash that like button. It actually helps this stuff reach more people who need to hear it. And if you're keen for more straight up breakdowns of Aussie money and property, no fluff, hit subscribe because I've got more of these on the way. Thanks heaps for watching. See you in the next one.